Hello and welcome to Back Chat from the Arc at Headingley. And any would-be boy band producers watching today, what about this panel? We've got Danny Lockwood from League Weekly on drums because he keeps banging on and on and on. We've got Graham Lovett, freelance broadcaster, a very, very deep bass guitar. And on league vocals, we've got Garry Schofield, who very rarely hits the right notes. We're coming towards the denouement of the regular season. It's all getting very exciting, perhaps a little more exciting than we expected it to be. How do you make the shake-up at the moment, Danny?
Yeah, this past weekend's action has really given us a good mix-up for the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season, Dave. No one saw that defeat of Hull's coming at Huddersfield. Huddersfield looked like they were playing for the coach for one of the few times this season, and Hull were just completely off the food, really missed Gareth Ellis. And of course, with Wigan going down to the south of France and really spoiling the Catalan Dragons' birthday, their 10th birthday celebrations. They join Hull at the top of the table now without ever having looked to be in great form, quite honestly. So I think Wigan are the dark horses, showing their class late in the race. And it's up now for Warrington and Catalans to try and stay with them, I think.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Coach of the Year very shortly, but let me just throw Sean Wayne's name into that hat because they haven't looked great, have they, throughout this season? And by his own admission, they've not. But they've always been up there, and they look like they're going to finish right up there.
Yes, he's all through the season he's been critical of certain parts of the game, and but they've come up with the goods. And as Dan just said, now as we get to the business end of the season, they're doing it right, and probably go from strength to strength from there.
First half against Cass in the Cup, and the whole of the game against Catalan, they look like the Wigan of old.
Outstanding, and as I say, for the 40 minutes against Cass, sheer quality. Sheer quality there from a defensive point of view. We know how we're going to play defensively. The ruck area, they control that very nicely, but it was the creative part of it was very impressive. Sean's not been happy about that. He's just saying at this moment in time still, maybe 4 out of 5 out of 10. But it's a business end of the season here coming now. And what they did to Catalans at the weekend, they absolutely battered the Catalans, both not just on the scoreboard, but defensively as well. But creativeness, that's what it's got there. The big game players. Tompkins is getting back to somewhere near. George Williams and Matty Smith is showing that sort of creativity now. Big Ryan Sutton showing the sort of ball skills, what he's got there. You Gildart with the pace. Manfredi's in great form. So Wigan on Saturday really put a marker down coming the business end of the season.
And they've got Frank Paul to come in as well.
Yeah, they do. It's all looking good for Wigan because, of course, they've been light on manpower, and I think that's been a theme of the season for a lot of clubs, for Leeds and Huddersfield at the bottom end of the table. But right across the piece, the teams have been struggling. Wigan have had a lot of men out. They've got Sean O'Loughlin back in now. I thought he looked rusty against Castleford. He looked back on the game this past weekend. And you'd have to say that if you're going to be laying your money down right now, that they would be the team, especially what Scoy said, because they seem to have found that little bit of creative spark. You always know that we're going to keep opposition teams, apart from the one blip against Wakefield earlier in the season. You always know they're going to keep their defence. They're going to defend it like mongrels. But now that they've started showing signs of life with the ball in hand, I think everybody else has got to watch out.
I tell you what as well, Danny, you just mentioned there, and you see him literally nearly every week, don't you? I can't stress the importance of what Sean O'Loughlin brings to that team, because what he does, he takes all the pressure away from Matty Smith. You see a different Matty Smith when O'Loughlin is playing that team, because from a pressure point of view, defensively we know what he is, but what he does, he gets himself at first man, which releases Matty Smith to get that little bit wider, gives him a little bit more time, and that's why O'Loughlin is so important for Matty Smith and Wigan when he's playing.
He's the leader, Scoy. He is the leader. But one, you mentioned injuries, and of course the big one is McIlorum.
Yeah.
Been without McIlorum virtually all season, the top hooker in the game, and they've caught without it and done well. And I think that's a big plus for
I tell you as well, I reckon's been a huge player for Wigan this year. He's bought into the Wigan philosophy, and at first when they signed him, everybody went, what's they signed him for? Tau Tai. He really struggled with the Wigan philosophy. Now he's bought into that Wigan philosophy. What a player he's become for Wigan as well this season.
And he's not making the mistakes that he did earlier on. Giving away penalties, losing the ball. He's very, very strong, and he's coming on even stronger now. He looks very, very good. He does.
One of their key players, not key players, but one of their important players has been John Bateman, and Sean Wayne is always full of praise for John Bateman after matches. And obviously he's been suspended by the club. I think a lot of us expected him never to play for Wigan again. It looks like he's coming back. Does that unsettle the camp at all if he comes back in?
I wouldn't have thought so. I think he'll add to the strength of the side, and if you're a professional sportsman, whether football or rugby, you want the best players out there to help you win, and Bateman will do that. Having said that, the person who was allegedly involved in the incident with him, Mossop, He's playing better now than he's ever played in his life. He's absolutely superb. But Danny spoke about the French game. He was awesome down there, along with Flowers. Flowers was awesome as well. They're both coming back into great form.
Yeah. I think that mix in the dressing room is always a difficult one. We don't know exactly what went on between John Bateman and Lee Mossop, except it was a violent incident and it was enough to earn Bateman a 2-month sit down and a hefty fine. But you know, these guys are professional athletes, and you would expect them to get on with their job. They're getting close now to the business end of the season. They've got a Challenge Cup to play for. They've got a Super League ring to play for. You know, these guys have got a big chance, and I think they've got a, you know, they're grown up enough to realise that whatever it was they got up to was stupid, and there's a bigger picture here.
I think as well, what you've got to do with Wigan is, you look at the coaches, Sean Wayne. If they don't sort it out between themselves, Sean will sort it out between them. He will do it themselves. He'll get them together and bang their heads. And if they don't like it that way, he will make sure there won't be any animosity there in that dressing room between Bateman and Mossop when he comes back.
If the job's made easier by someone coming in, you want to do it that way. Bateman will make
But like a new signing, won't it?
Well, yeah,
but like a new signing, he will.
If he comes back against a challenge, which I think is the plan, it will be a new signing, as you're saying. It will make the job a little bit easier. Difficult job to do, going for the league leaders, the grand final, and in the challenge. It's a difficult job, but Bateman will make that job easier if he comes back.
I tell you what, as well, we mentioned Wigan, how well they're coming. The semi-final to play Hull on Thursday night, Dave, and I don't know what you lads think, but their attitude was absolutely woeful against Huddersfield, because when we look at Huddersfield, the way they played the week before against Wakefield, it was an absolute pathetic performance, and the chairman himself, Ken Davey, and rightly so, plenty of time and respect for Ken Davey, you know, and he called his players dishonest. Ken Davey didn't deserve that sort of performance, neither did Andy Kelly, the coach from there. So Hull should have known that they was going to get a response. And quite clearly, after 2 minutes, I thought to myself, their attitude's wrong here. So it was a wake-up call for the Hull players, and Lee Radford as well, to say, listen, if we don't turn up against, it doesn't matter if you're the top team or the bottom team with the right attitude, we're going to get found out. Saying nothing away from Huddersfield, they were outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Led greatly round the field with Jamie Ellis. Big question I would have put with Huddersfield, now the big question is, Danny Brough wasn't playing. Jamie Ellis plays far better without Danny Brough taking charge. It's an interesting one for the new coach when he comes in at Huddersfield. Yeah. Well, does he pick Danny Brough or stick with Jamie Ellis getting him around the field?
Of course he picks Danny Brough's score. He's got to pick.
And you know, I think, they have the perfect storm of Hull having an absolutely terrible night. They're one really bad night.
It's all about their attitude, Danny.
They didn't turn up to play, and whether it was because Gareth Ellis wasn't on the field or they missed Jamie Shaw at fullback, I thought Young Norton struggled a bit. But opposite him, Jake Connor had an absolutely career game.
He had to.
Well, he was playing against. He was playing against his. You know, the team is joining next year. Lee Radford had told him, "No pressure, son." He came out and had a night to remember. Did that boy? Because he showed us things that I've certainly not seen of him while he's been playing in the centres. A good, steady-headed kid with a little bit of excitement. Who, you know, a prospect. He looked like the real deal. He looked like an England fullback. In that game, and he really handed it to Hull. So. Better times ahead for Huddersfield. Can they make the 8? Not really. No. Not realistically. No. Hull, that was a big wake-up call. They need to now, you know, whether it's locking Lee Radford out of the changing room as they did after that Widnes defeat, whether it's making him walk home, I don't know. They need some serious attitude adjustment if they're going to close out.
You do get. I mean, that locking out at Widnes did give you the impression that they are players who are honest with themselves, and that honesty is going to be important at this time of the year, is it? Because I mean, this has been a massive season for Hull. This could be an even bigger. This could be the biggest season that Hull have had since the 80s, couldn't it? Yeah. And yet it could all go wrong. It's all about attitude from here on in.
I was at the game when Widnes played Hull, and he came into the press conference afterwards, and he was absolutely shell shocked. And when he told us. Came out with it straight up front, that the players had asked all the staff to leave. I thought, this is not right. This cannot be right. And I fully expected it to go downhill. I didn't expect him to be in the job much longer after that, because it didn't feel right at all. And lo and behold,
they got a grip, didn't they?
Yeah, they did indeed. Whether it was down to people like Ellis, the experienced people in the side, but it was something that I've been in this game for far too long now, and I've never known coaches and bosses to be chucked out of a...
There's a few more clubs could take that lead, really.
Absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, the players are responsible for performances, and that's exactly what Hull did at Widnes. But also as well, the big problem for Hull is they've got to sort out the half-back situation from a creativity point of view. Leon, for mine, I think for everybody as well, I think we'll all agree he's past his sell-by date, to be honest with you. So what they've got to do, the forward pack's fine. It's big, it's mobile. They've got the pace, what they've not had for a few years. Jamie Shaw coming from the back, and they've got pace in the back. But it's that creative issue with Sneyd. Does he play with Tumavavi or does he play with Price? Because the way Sneyd played last Thursday night against Huddersfield wasn't one of his better games. So the big situation for Radford is, who does he pick at standoff playing with Mark Sneyd? Is it Tumavavi or Price? That's a big headache.
Well, whoever it is, Gary, they've got to turn up ready to play.
Absolutely.
Because you can occasionally get away with one of your playmakers having an off night. But when both of them look like they don't want to get wet or dirty,
correct, yeah.
and they didn't, they just didn't look interested, those two. So you can have all the grunt and the effort up front that you want, but if those guys in the middle are not making the team tick, you're going to struggle to get a result.
I fully expected Leeds players to chuck McDermott out about 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago.
Well, that should have been 12 weeks ago, not about 6 or 7 weeks ago.
Seeing if it made any difference. After what it did to Hull, that was an unbelievable experience.
Because I tell you what, one thing for sure, when they play that semi-final against Wigan, if that forward pack of Hull thinks they're going to steamroll Wigan, not a chance. Not a chance.
That is going to be a hell of a semi-final, isn't it? That, you know, I mean, the old cliche, that should have been at Wembley for the final, shouldn't it? I mean, due respect to Warrington and Wakefield, but I mean, that is going to be a hell of a semi-final.
It's at Doncaster on a Friday night.
Yeah. You're not happy with that?
No, I'm not.
Why not?
I know semi-finals these days are not that well supported, and Doncaster might get a near to full house as anywhere else, but I just think it's a fair jag coming across on a Friday night.
Well, the one thing at least is that with it being the start of the school summer holidays, hopefully the M62 won't be that bad for Wigan fans trying to get across the hill. But it is a heck of a journey, is that?
I'm led to believe that before the draw was made, that whoever Hull drew was going to be at Doncaster. Whoever they drew, it was going to be at Doncaster if they'd made the semi-final.
Well, they are the one team, Dave. I mean, I thought when we watched Hull and Huddersfield, and if you saw it on the TV last week, it looked shocking. The John Smith Stadium. Yeah. It was just, I think there were just over 4,000 people in there. And Hull are one of the best travelling supported teams in the business. Yeah. So, you know, they probably had a fair proportion of that.
That's why Doncaster's a good idea from that point of view.
It's a great idea for them because they are the best travelling support. And, you know, when they can sniff another Wembley visit like this, they haven't been back in a long time. Obviously, they won it in 2005, but that was in Cardiff. Yeah, I think that was, whether that decision was made or not, I think it was probably the right one in terms of filling the ground.
Well, I do believe that they made a late play for Headingley. The RFL looked at the possibility of Headingley, but Headingley wasn't available because I think it's been reseeded that particular weekend. I mean, that would have been terrific, wouldn't it? Headingley on a Friday night, Hull, Wigan, that would have been fantastic. Would you have been any happier with that?
Yes, I'm not totally unhappy. I just think it's asking a lot to travel across that road on a Friday night going to Doncaster. I mean, it's not going to Leeds, it's not going to Huddersfield, it's further across. But just a point on away travel, did you see the Wigan spectators in the south of France on the weekend? What a following they took.
Well, they made a big party of it, didn't they?
They did.
I mean, it was a big event. I think if I was going to have a weekend away at this time of year, especially with the British summer we've been having, I'd fancy Perpignan as well in July.
Yeah,
good. I think Colella was even better than Perpignan, I think.
Widnes took a lot to Leeds, and Leeds got 16,000 at the weekend for what is essentially a meaningless game. And a lot of Widnes fans travelled over as well, so that's happening as well. Just going back to the semi-finals, the Friday night, the reason that's been chosen as a Friday night game on another channel, but they're expecting a very big audience, TV audience, and that's why it's Friday, not Saturday, Sunday.
Well, so they should, because it's the Challenge Cup, the biggest competition in the game. Everybody wants to be part of the Challenge Cup, not just a semi-final, but it's 80 minutes away from Wembley. You know, so everybody wants to be part of it, Dave. So why should it not? We've got the two best teams at this moment in time in the comp. I think it's going to be mouthwatering. Yeah. I do. Going to be mouthwatering.
What is the most important, David? Is it getting people into the ground to see it? We mentioned Huddersfield last week, how poor that looked. Or is it the TV audience? What is the priority?
Well, it's a balance, isn't it? And they go for Doncaster on a Friday night. They know it's going to be full. They know it's going to be full. I mean, Wigan fans might have a problem getting across there. It's not that much further from Wigan to Doncaster as it is from Hull to Doncaster. Not a lot further.
Did you do A-level geography?
Yes, I did.
I'm not buying your car.
But the problem, I mean, the thing is, you've got to have a ground that looks good, and occasionally it's pointless putting it on a big TV channel and saying, right, this is a really important event, and then pointing the cameras at one man and a dog. Yeah. You've got to have a big noise and a big atmosphere there as well, haven't you? Which you get at Doncaster, and it's Friday night, big TV audience.
Yeah, and so you know, it is a balancing act, isn't it? You're never going to please everybody. You can't make a decision. You know, you don't have a magic wand for this. You just hope that the teams live up to the occasion and put on a show for everybody that's watching.
Yeah. By the same token, would you expect Warrington to fill the sporting village at Leeds.
Well, I think Wakefield will take a few. Wakefield will take a few.
Oh, Wakefield will take plenty.
Yeah.
They will take plenty. Yeah, I can't see why that can't be filled at Leeds.
We have this every year with the semi-final venues. Like, it takes us by surprise every year. It's a neutral venue. It's never going to be exactly half and half between one club. I think rugby league fans need to start thinking, actually, let's
Agree.
stop being
Absolutely.
so parochial,
Yeah.
and let's recognise it's a big game, and if we have to travel a little bit further than somebody else, so be it.
It's a day out, isn't it? Simple as that. It's
Yeah.
a day out.
Or a
And if
night
your team
out.
wins,
Or
it's
night
even
out.
better.
Yeah.
Well, whatever terminology you want to put on it, it's an occasion, and if your team wins, you're going where you want to be beat, and that's Wembley.
What about the other semi? Warrington-Wakefield. Do you give Wakefield a chance there?
This season of all seasons, you'd give Wakefield a chance because they've shown time and again that they have a real upset in them. You know, if in Jacob Miller, there's a player who's been kind of written off once or twice, but he has been one of the few really creative live wire halfbacks in Super League this season who can do something that surprises you. You know, because I think that we lack genuine pace and that kind of ad hoc sense that a really good halfback brings to the occasion. Tom Johnston's gone quiet. You know, I know he got injured at the weekend. I do think that there's still something to come out of Wakefield, and I think that they probably realistically realise they're not going to make an impression on the Super 8s, Dave. This is their moment. So they're going to be taking their A game. If you're a bookmaker, the favourite is Warrington over and over and over again because they really have got the big game experience. But I think that we could get a far closer game than people expect.
Yeah, watching Warrington this year, you know they're capable of blowing Wakefield away, but you also know they're capable of maybe being caught.
Then going to the shell.
Yeah. Well, we
On
should see.
on that occasion, I think you're doing a good job chalking it up, Dan, but I think Warrington will be too good.
Well, we shall see. And we'll have lots more chat as well in the next part of Back Chat. Welcome back to Back Chat, part 2 from the Arc at Headingley. We were talking about the Challenge Cup semi-finals, but that's still two weeks away. By the way, if you're wondering why we're not talking about Salford, this programme was recorded before the Salford verdict came in, so we don't know whether Salford have got points back, not got points back, so that's the reason why we're not talking about Salford at the moment. But let's talk about St Helens, because I think a few weeks ago, Gary, everybody was saying it's top 4 now. It's Wigan, it's Catalan, it's Hull, it's Warrington. It's one of those 4, or 2 of those 4 are going to the grand final. St Helens are sneaking back in there into contention.
They are sneaking. They're knocking on the door, and certainly they're knocking on Catalan's door at this moment in time, because the Catalans over the last 4 or 5 weeks, they've been very ordinary. And the question people asking with Catalans, have they peaked too early? So it's there. But yeah, Kieran Cunningham at this moment in time, he's not making a lot of noises. Even he's still not pretty happy the way that they're playing, but they're getting results.
Yeah.
They're creeping up there. So for mine, Catalans better start looking over the shoulder, because St Helens, as we know, certainly the way they won the grand final 2 years ago, wasn't playing very smart rugby league, wasn't playing very good rugby league. But we know they won the grand final. So Kieran, at this moment in time, he'll be pretty happy the way St Helens are going.
Because he's had his critics this year, hasn't he? Not least from within the St Helens family, so to speak.
He has. A lot of the fans have been on his back, and he's done well to force it up. But a lot depends on the St Helens fixtures, the last 3 fixtures. I know they go to the DW on the last one. I'm not quite sure what the other 2 are, but they're certainly thereabouts, and they're letting people round about, putting them on the mark, they're letting them know that they're there.
I think the more important thing, Dave, is okay. We are focused on where people finish, you know, over the next 3 weeks in that Super 8. But of course, if St Helens are still in 5th and they look at least nailed on for that, you know, they've then got another 7 weeks to make a real impression. And this is the time of the season when it counts. You know, like everybody else, they've had the problems. Not just with injuries, they've looked lost. It's looked to me like a dressing room that isn't as tight as some of the other ones that we've seen around the game this season. But there is a sense, and it seems to be coming out of St Helens, that they're finally addressing whatever the problem was. That you know, they are coming up on the rails. Catalan have been hit by the injury jinx that a lot of clubs seem to suffer. Top Carney, I thought last week, looked way off his food. Just didn't really play like we know he can. And I think St Helens are the one true bolter, if you like, given that Castleford are really struggling in that middle four of Super League. I think Saints are the ones that you've got to watch, because if anybody's going to make a run, it is them.
You'd want to be within 4 points of the top four, wouldn't you, to give yourselves a real... I think 6 points and anything more than that, and maybe that's too much to make up.
Indeed, I agree with that. But I think the problem at Saints has been there all season. It's been the half-back situation. You probably know this better than anybody else. They've never had a settled or a happy half-back combination, and it's told in so many matches.
Well, at the weekend, I think it was John Wilkin and Jordan Turner, last weekend at the fixtures there.
Turner had a good game, wasn't
it? It is useful, but it's not a standoff game. He's not a half-back. Well, again, when I talk about half-backs, you've got to have that right balance where you've got to have one who's the total organiser there, then the other half-back has got to be the support player, and then at times he's going to take over for 4 or 5 minutes just to take the pressure off a little bit. Like when you look at Wakefield's half-backs, they're ideal. Jacob Miller's the main organiser, then Liam Fiddle will just take control for 4 or 5 minutes. Wigan have got it there at times with Matty Smith and George Williams. So the big issue is not from the creative point of view, but also to its handling the pressure when it's needed from the creative.
Managing the game.
Managing the game, as I say, and it's getting that response from there. And at times, St Helens have lacked a leader. They have lacked a leader.
I tell you one thing that's been niggling me, though, recently. We've seen these new signings coming in at this stage of the season. So Leeds have signed Seguiaro, who's a quality hooker, who can make a real difference to them. Wigan have signed Frank Paul Nuasala, quality front row forward who can make a difference to them, and Castleford get Rangi back as well, and of course on his day is as good as anything in Super League. So key players at a key stage of the season. Is that ethically okay, or should we be looking at having an earlier transfer deadline? I
think in years past you might have argued the ethical case, Dave, but I think that the paucity of talent we have coming on, throughout Super League, the lack of pressure on places, the absence of star names, I don't think we can afford to turn our nose up at them. I think there are other circumstances behind it as well. I mean, certainly with Zach Hardacre, getting a new lease of life down in Penrith in the exchange deal with James Seguiaro. I don't know what Seguiaro can bring to Leeds at this stage of the season, in all honesty.
What keeps them up? That's the aim.
Well, I would have a real problem, imagining Leeds down in the Championship next year. But in terms of the presence of Rangi, do we want a guy that does have all that Rangi can bring to a game? Do we want him sitting on the sidelines? Okay, it was a self-imposed retirement that he announced, but I just don't think our game's big enough to be able to afford to turn its nose up at some real star talents.
This issue came really its ugly head last year with Lee. Lee were very disappointed over the way the middle eights went, and in particularly how Wakefield spent all their money to actually buy the place in the Super League. So maybe there is a case for having a deadline. Having said that, to get world-class players into our game, you can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Seguiaro at Leeds, Leeds have needed a hooker all season, haven't they? And I know it's a situation with Zach Hardacre, but I think it's a strange one with Cass with Rangi Chase, to be honest with you.
Why?
Yeah, I do.
Because they've been struggling at half-back. I mean, Millington's been
but
again,
Dave, it's getting that right blend there, because Luke Gale, he signed a long-term contract. He's the number one man there. He's the main man who's doing all the creativeness. We know what Rangi can bring, from point of view, his maverick style of play. So who's going to be the main man? Is there going to be a bit of fallout between Luke Gale and Rangi Chase? Is Rangi going to play at full-back there? I would play him at full-back.
I was going to say, because Luke Dawn retires at the end of the season.
Luke Dawn, but I would play Rangi at full-back. Just let him do what he does, because unfortunately for Rangi, he's not a team player. And I can reassure you, the way that he left Castleford as well 3 years ago, didn't leave it on happy terms. No. The way that he went. So first of all, it's going to be a test of Darrell's man management skills with him, a test of Randy's character as he changed. He's going to be a team player, and then thirdly, winning the Castleford supporters over again.
I think Castleford needs something to shake things up, don't they? Because they've been in a dire spell of form. They have struggled. They've had no depth at half back. So Rangi, whether he's playing at 1 or 6, can at least bring them a bit of something. But I was surprised from the point of view that I didn't think Darrell Powell tried too hard to keep Rangi. I think they were probably counting the money were cast that they could get for him when he left. But right now, desperate times, they've really got to try and make a fist of things in the eight of Castleford. They need some help from somewhere. So it'll be an interesting one. I actually can see the sense of it.
You get a feeling somewhere down the line it will end in tears. Rang your chase and tears are never, never far away. And somewhere down they might get away with it. You might do them a job for a few weeks, but sooner or later it will injure tears. You mentioned Leeds and Championship. One thing you've got to say about Leeds, and that is the supporters.
Yeah.
The supporters have been absolutely superb at Headingley. Massive big crowds. And in my experience in the past, if supporters have turned against the club, turned against the coach, he goes, he has to go. Unfortunately for McDermott, they've stuck with it and they've supported the club very well at a difficult time for them. And it's hats off to the Leeds
I'll tell you what
supporters.
as well, I've seen a bit of Championship this year, and as bad as what Leeds have been, there's nothing in the Championship that'll even beat a very, very ordinary Leeds side.
But they're going to face 7 cup ties, aren't they?
Oh, they are.
I mean, your Batley's. I mean, you'd expect Leeds to beat Batley, but
Dave,
Batley are going to absolutely.
Dave, one thing for sure, if it's let's just say it's Batley, Halifax, London, and Leigh, they won't be intimidated by playing Leeds. No way, mate. They will not be intimidated. So now it's all about the mental strength of these Leeds players to say, well, listen, it's about time I grow some crystals this year, and quite simply, we need to start performing to making sure our Super League survival, because they will not be intimidated. They will not be intimidated.
We both saw the Leeds game against Widnes, and terrific win for Widnes, but I thought there were glimpses in that of Leeds being back to where they were.
Dave,
not consistently, but there were glimpses.
Exactly, yeah. For 10, 12, maybe 15 minutes they were okay, but then at times, when they needed a leader out there, it just wasn't there. You know, and when you looked at the organisation, quite simply, you could have thrown a towel over them. And I don't mean a bath towel, I mean a tea towel. That's how bad they was. Looking out for a leader out there, because the main big thing for Leeds is they've been rudderless and they've had no leader out there. And at times against Widnes, if Kevin Brown had been playing in Leeds, it'd have been 2 points for Leeds. It's as simple as that.
But all season they've been good for various parts of the game.
I think for the last 10 games, they scored the first try. Yeah. You know, they scored the first try.
Invariably up to half time, they've been the better side in the game, and then just faded. When they went to Magic at Newcastle against Wigan, they were competitive up to half time, and then they fell away.
I mean, I know they've reopened their Kirkstall training ground this year, and I've got sick and tired of listening to Brian McDermott blaming that. You know,
well, he said it's a factor. He's not blaming it.
Okay,
it is a factor.
Any excuse in a storm, Dave. The fact is that this Leeds team has been an absolute shadow of what we know it could and should be. Now, they've got some players back. They've got most of the players back. But the fact that we're still talking about them, you know, a good home defeat to Widnes, I just don't think is plausible. The bigger question for me is, what is the bigger plan for Leeds next year, and does it involve Brian McDermott? And I personally don't see how it can, but because I think that there needs root and branch change there right now, because I just still don't see the attitude. I see 20 minutes worth of effort and organisation. I just don't see, and I agree with Garry, by the way, that they're not going to be in the Championship next year. No way. But that should not be where Leeds are setting their sights and goals. I think it has to be a lot bigger than that. And I think, you know, I would be surprised if Gary Hetherington doesn't have some kind of plan.
Just to get back to the Middle Lakes, Leeds finishing bottom, does that make them have 4 home fixtures?
No, 3 home fixtures and 4 away. Yeah. Right. And I think as it stands, they'd be Leigh away.
It's testing time for these Leeds players, and also as well, you know, we all know Gary pretty well. He doesn't give a lot away, Gary, doesn't he? But one thing for sure here now, when you look at the recruitment from this year, you know, we know the 3 players who went, and quite clearly it's been pretty obvious that they're a one-man team. Without Sinfield, then there was nothing from a point of view with creativeness and leadership. But the recruitment's going to be very, very important, because if he doesn't recruit, let's just say, another 2 or 3 quality players, when you look at that squad who played at the weekend, are they going to get any better? Because they're coming to the ages now where simply they're not going to get no better. So is it going to be a struggle now for Leeds over the next 2, 3, 5 seasons with the squad what they've got this moment?
Well, Hardaker's gone, and possibly for a long time, although at the moment it's only till the end of the season. And there's all kinds of rumours about Watkins and Ryan Hall going to Warrington, Rugby Union, etc. So there could be a breakup. Or are we getting too excited about it?
Leeds are the best managed organisation and the most privately managed organisation out of Super League. So I don't expect there'll be any shaking the branches before we wrap the season up. But I would imagine at that point, you know, there'll be a pretty radical move somewhere. I think there has to be. I think you know, you're talking about 16,000 in the ground last week. Can you imagine the Championship clubs absolutely licking their lips at the prospect of getting some Leeds fans? They'll be selling grounds out in the Championship. But the fact is, it isn't good enough for the Leeds Rhinos, and I do think there will have to be change, because this season just has fallen below any level of acceptability.
Just to get away from the recruitment, what's the youngsters coming through the academy? What you're close to that?
Well, I don't think there's too many, and again, it's a head scratcher for me at times. You know, why Jordan Lily's not playing week in and week out? I find it very, very strange.
Kainos has not been getting much game.
Kainos, you know, Kainos has been Leeds' best player all season.
Yeah.
And at the weekend, everybody was scratching their head. You know, why he didn't play? You know, Ablett's just come back from injury from there, and so he played 65 minutes. It's a pretty warm day, but yeah, Kainos not getting on there because he has been one of the Leeds' best players, and as I say, it's just been very, very disappointing from this year. But coming through, as you mentioned, Graham, Jordan Lilly, why he's not playing, but I don't think there's a lot of quality coming through from Leeds at the academy.
There wasn't a lot of pressure on Tony Smith at Warrington, and they went through a similar process, and Warrington stuck with Tony Smith and have been proven right to do that. So why should Leeds not stick with a treble-winning coach? Because of the playing staff are going through a bit of a spin dryer experience.
Sure, but Warrington were always there and thereabouts, Dave. They weren't plumb bottom of a competition that's been the most average, and I'm being kind there, that I've seen in 20 years of Super League.
And Warrington weren't coming from winning 3 trophies either.
That's right. So I just think it's been the cataclysmic drop, and the fact that there doesn't seem to have been a plan to, you know, or even an ability to motivate the remaining Leeds squad into performing. They needed to overachieve, even with the meagre sort of resources they've had this year, and they have not. They've disappointed. And I think that in itself makes a completely different scenario from Tony Smith's.
Can you see them, I think we're all in agreement that they're not going to get relegated. We don't think they're going to get relegated. Can you see them in the £1 million game of having to win the £1 million game?
No,
because they don't have to finish bottom of the Super League. I mean, they're bottom of the Super League at the moment. If they finish at the bottom of the Super League pile in the playoffs, then they're in the £1 million
they'll be
game.
home and dry before that.
You reckon?
I'll tell you what, don't rule it out. Don't rule it out, honestly. Don't rule it out, Graham.
We keep saying it week in, week out, don't we? We keep thinking this is the week that we see the old Leeds and that they come back, and week after week they're disappointed.
They're going to have to do better than Salford, than Hull Kingston Rovers, and
Witness.
Witness. They're going to have to do better. No, not Witness.
No,
Who is it? Who's Huddersfield. Huddersfield, of course it is. Huddersfield, Hull KR and Salford. They're going to have to do better than those 3 to avoid the £1 million game.
You mentioned them other 3 teams there as well, and they say they won't be intimidated by Leeds. And as I say, the championship clubs, they won't be intimidated by Leeds. So now it's all about the attitude of Leeds. These players saying, hey, listen, instead of us looking at semi-final football, looking at these big crowds, now we've got a different mentality here because we know we're going to be under pressure for the full 80 minutes of the fixtures.
They've never run up a hill like Mount Pleasant before, haven't some of those Leeds players.
It's
unthinkable. It really is unthinkable. I mean, it would be bad for Rugby League if they go down. I know it happens and it happens. It happens in all sports.
Graham, nobody's any God-given right to be there.
I understand
nobody's got
but
that.
I'm sure that the resources that Etherington, the McDermott, what they have at Headingley, will see them through.
Hey, listen, mate, go back to your days in Morris's day when he signed Fielding and Dobson.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. We shall see. And that brings us to the end of part 2 on Back Chat. We're back for even more in just a few moments' time. See you then. Here on Back Chat, we always give you plenty of opinions, and in our next show, we've got even more with 3 of the game's big guns. A chairman's special, the chairman of Hull Kingston Rovers, Neil Hudgell, the chairman of Wakefield, Michael Carter, and the chairman of Halifax, Michael Steele. That's the chairman's special on Back Chat, Thursday, July 21st on Premier Sports. Hello and welcome back to Back Chat for the 3rd and final part, you'll be relieved to know, and this is the part where traditionally we talk more about the NRL and its influence on Super League. Ever seen Garry Schofield go purple? The Morris twins playing for England.
Don't start, Woodsy. Don't start now. Not a chance. No brainer. And even St Hodgkinson and I say Chris Hyington, he wasn't good enough when he played in 2012. Hyington, don't worry about that. But the the astonishment for mine is with Trent Hunter, he's already had chats with Wayne Bennett, so he's seriously thinking on playing him. He's not even nowhere good enough to be an international player. Never mind, I don't want him in an England shirt because he's an Australian. I just find it absolutely bonkers, and I'm just not in for it whatsoever. No way, mate.
Well, what about the Morris twins? They're great players.
No, they're not.
They're
Australians.
They're Australian caps.
They're Australians. They're Australians. I don't want them.
Your dad's English.
I don't want them in an England shirt. And it's like, say, for instance, if Greg Inglis made himself available, I don't want him in an England shirt. They're Australian.
What about Jonathan Thurston?
I don't want Jonathan Thurston in an England shirt.
Daly Cherry Evans?
I don't want him in an England shirt.
His mum's English.
David, I don't want any of them in an England jersey. Simple as.
Stop now. It's going to explode in a minute. No, I think
You're right about purple.
There's a big question here. We talk about big questions that we'd like to talk about with signing deadlines in Super League. The two Morris boys, 18 caps for Australia and 6 caps for Australia, multiple state of origin appearances. Trent Hopkinson might not be good enough for England in your book, Scoy, but he's certainly good enough for New South Wales because he's played half a dozen times for the Blues in state of origin. I actually wonder if we're losing the plot, because I'm not going to get purple like him because it just doesn't suit me with his haircut. But the fact is, we should not be taking guys that have got 24 Australian caps between them and trying to convert them to our cause. Because what the danger of this for me, Woodsy, is that we're turning this into just an intra-NRL competition. If Wayne Bennett is going to be picking 7 or 8 Poms who are playing in the NRL and then trying to round up another half dozen who may or may not qualify through whatever loose affiliation they have, it absolutely, it takes a shovel, it digs a hole and it buries Super League in the ground.
The whole international selective policy is completely wrong.
It's a joke.
It is. It needs looking at and a real serious inquiry into it and on picking genuine people for yourself.
Well, the seeds were sown for this debacle earlier in the season when Australia decided to play Semi Radradra, who is completely and utterly Fijian, qualifies only for playing for Australia by residency. And I thought the Kangaroos, I thought the Aussies were better than that, but clearly not. But then we were told by the RLIF, of which the chairman is Nigel Wood, that there would be a review of the national affiliations later in the season. We're waiting on that. So people have said that the Morris twins can't play for England because they've already played for Australia. Not so. Everything's up in the air, and all the signs coming out of the RLIF, out of Wayne Bennett, the New England coach, and his boss Nigel Wood, is that they'll just snip the ribbon on it, and you can play.
You were snipping the ribbon there.
I just wonder what you were doing then, Dan.
And you can play offended by that. He was snipping a ribbon.
And you can play for anyone. You can play for anyone if you have any national affiliation at all, and I just think that is shocking.
But why do we get so precious about it? Why do we get so precious about it? Because Henry Paul does the haka for New Zealand playing rugby league, and then sings "God Save the Queen" playing rugby union for England.
I don't think
every sport, and that's just one example. Every sport. You look at the Scotland rugby union side, and littered with Australians and New Zealanders. England have just gone on tour to Australia. They picked a Samoan who plays in Ireland, wasn't even qualified to play for England. Ex-rugby league player. So why do we get pressure? The Boateng brothers in football, one plays for Germany, the other one plays for another country. I can't remember who it is now. Why do we get so pressure?
I couldn't care less what other nations do or what other sports do. I just don't want to see Australians or Kiwis or any other foreigners in our game play for England shirt. I just don't want it. I just don't want to be part of it. It's there on offer, but I just don't want it. But also going back to the Wayne Bennett scenario, we knew it was over here a couple of weeks ago. Just put a total press ban on there, but it just tells me that Wayne Bennett, he has got an open door to do what he wants, to say what he wants, and also to pick what he wants. And I think it's totally wrong. As Wayne Bennett is as a head coach, okay, we're going to go for the best. I'm not Australian, no, I would like to have seen a British coach there. But if we are going to get the best, okay, Wayne Bennett. But secondly, for sure, don't give him an open door to do what he wants, because literally he would just take the pride out of that shirt. I don't want any Tom, Dick and Harry playing for England.
I don't think, I accept the argument about the England cricket team having South Africans and Zimbabweans and Irishmen, but they've had established rules for quite some time, Dave, as have we. And it's the fact that we are snipping apart those rules, the fact that we're changing, the whole landscape of qualification to suit a short-term goal of the British game, to try to somehow get some real legitimacy on the international stage and win a Four Nations or a World Cup next year. I just think that smacks of desperation, really, and that is what I think is sad, because we're sending out the wrong messages
Do you know what, Danny?
to everybody.
Exactly. You've just said the right thing there, desperation. And let's just say this, Dave, right? We pick, I don't know, 4 or 5 Australians and win the 4 Nations. Then we pick another 2 more, so we have 6 and win the World Cup. Everybody will be saying, oh, you've only won it because you've got Australians in there.
I've got an Australian coach.
Not
for the first time.
I'm not happy with that, but unfortunately, the RFL, they want the best man who they reckon is a coach in there. So, no, I would have liked to have seen an Englishman as a coach, Daryl Powell or Sean Wayne, being in charge from there. But, we've gone that way. But I just don't want to see players in that England shirt, and let's do it our way.
Do the Morris boys really consider themselves English? No, I don't think so.
Well, obviously they don't, because they play for Australia.
Yeah.
I tell you, all joking aside, and I've played a bit of devil's advocate there, but my big disappointment in all of this is that we've had this story surface. Now, the truth of it or not, we're not entirely certain, because nobody's spoken about it. The Morris boys, Wayne Bennett, certainly not. But the big disappointment is the integrity of English Rugby League is at stake here, and the Rugby Football League have not come out and said, not happening. It's taken Taz Battieri, one of the great international Rugby League people, to say, no, that shouldn't happen. It's taken Taz Battieri on the other side of the world. No one from the RFL has stood up and said, this should never happen.
As the most capped player for Great Britain with Mick Sullivan,
yep.
with Mick Sullivan, right?
Yep.
Captain my country, been on 4 Great Britain tours. I'm telling you, the RFL as well. Put a stop to this. We don't want any Australians playing for us, or any Kiwis, or anybody else. Simple as that. Keep it British.
It needs looking at and reviewing. I'm still struggling with Paddy Richards playing for Ireland. I've always struggled with that one. Never get my head around it. It needs sorting out.
But there is a certain leeway that has crept into international sport, into our own game over the years. And I can understand these Tier 1 and Tier 2 nations, whereby a player can play for Ireland or Wales, but is still qualified to play for a Tier 1 country, whether that be New Zealand, Australia or England. So, that has been part of the landscape for long enough now that we've got used to it. But when you then start completely rewriting the rules, and I disagree with you when you say that there's been no comment from the RFL, by the way, about this, because Nigel seemed to indicate at his press conference last week very clearly that England will play by whatever the rules are. And as I said, the RLIF, which Nigel chairs, is going to make redraw the international landscape later this year, Dave. And it would not surprise me if part of Wayne Bennett's demands when he took the job were that he gets to pick whoever he wants. And if that means that he only has 3 or 4 proper Englishmen playing from Super League in his squad, it wouldn't surprise me if that's what we got.
Yeah. And one of the disappointments as well is that we were not that far away under Steve McNamara. We won a test
I thought
series
we were a million
against
miles away.
No, well, we won a test series against New Zealand, and that game against Australia in Melbourne, if we'd had the same video referee that gave the try for Dominic Manfredi for Wigan in the Challenge Cup last week, then Ryan Hall's try was a million every day a try. Yeah. So we would have won that. We'd have been in the final against New Zealand as well. So we're not a million miles away with a clutch of players.
Another disappointing thing is whatever rules they come up with, there'll always be someone at some club would try to circumnavigate it or cut across it or whatever, and that would have to stop as
I'll tell you what as well, another concern of mine is as well, we Wayne Bennett is going to be the style of play what we're going to play in the international arena, because, and I say when we saw the Kiwi test series last year, at times it was pretty boring to watch, wasn't it? And then when we saw that last test match between Australia and New Zealand, we know exactly how the Aussies are going to play. Stephen Kearney is the head coach of the Kiwis. He's part of Wayne Bennett's coaching setup at Broncos, so if he's copying that philosophy of Wayne Bennett, and if we play that sort of style of rugby league, first of all, it's going to be boring, and one thing for sure, we ain't going to beat the Kiwis and the Aussies playing them at their own game. Well, so it's going to be interesting now what he's going to come up with.
The Broncos got their backsides handed to them, 48 points to 6 by Melbourne. They're in free fall at the minute, so I don't think that says much about. I meant to wonder, Mr. Bennett doesn't want to talk to the media at the moment.
They've won 1 in the last 6.
I know you said we were close, Dave, and you can look at some of the scorelines and say, yeah, we were getting there. We did have a series win, albeit against a vastly underpowered New Zealand team. But the fact is this: we've not managed to get over the line for year after year after year after year when it's counted. And I hoped that Wayne Bennett would give the guys that we've got, and who are excelling in the NRL fairly, I thought he would bring them that edge, not bring in a foreign legion of mercenaries to help us do it. And that's the disappointment for me. Yeah. I do think he was the right man for the job. I do think he had something extra to give us. I do think he could have a positive effect on young British coaches if he chooses to, be so benevolent with his time and his skills. But right now, the signs are pretty disappointing.
And you know what? And you mentioned desperation, Danny, a couple of minutes ago. Do you know what? You know what the worrying factor is, Dave? If Greg Inglis, Thurston, Cronk, Smith, some of the forwards Gallagher made themselves available for England, do you know what he'd do? He'd pick the lot of them. And that's a disappointing thing about it as well. He would pick the lot of them.
Just going back to your point about boring rugby league, I think there's a real onus on all the coaches at the Four Nations this year to entertain us.
I agree.
Because I mean, it's going to be on national terrestrial TV. The game, in terms of public perception, the game is absolutely on the bones of its backside. I don't think it's ever had a lower profile nationally.
Well, we all
and
exactly.
This is where we have to grab the zeitgeist and make people say this is rugby league and it's fantastic.
We all know what's happened down under with the other code as well, so the way they played their game as well. So we need desperately not just to try and get the win of the Four Nations, but also to entertain.
But I do think that we have a message that we need to send out to young players coming through the game who want to play, want to wear the white and red of England, that there's an opportunity, there's an open door for them, and they're not going to get that if all they can hear is Aussie accents.
Well, what the message is at the moment is go and play in the NRL. That's
a different argument, Dave, and I think that and I've long argued that us having a rump of our top players playing against the best every week will be better ultimately for England.
Zach
but they are at least Englishmen.
Zach Hardacre has got a better chance now of being involved in that squad, having gone to Penrith if he plays, than he had if he'd stayed at Leeds.
Yeah, I agree with that. But Danny mentioned about coaches buying into Wayne Bennett, and if the least thing we can get out of Bennett's tenure with us is that our young coaches, our up-and-coming coaches, spending time with him, and Bennett then
But by all accounts, Graham, as well, and as well, fellas, when he was over here, he never even spoke to any coaches.
No.
He never even spoke. He'd spoke to one, Dennis Specs, who was his assistant, by the way, so, and well done, Dennis. But he hasn't even spoken to any coaches, so quite simply, it's going to be Wayne's way or no way. It's as simple as that.
Quite a few Super League coaches' noses were put out of joint by the fact that he spoke to the chief execs. I think he addressed the Super League.
But having gone back, he addressed them on Skype, didn't he?
Oh, well,
I think he'd gone back when he made that address.
Well, he can do that every Monday morning.
That whole thing was handled very, very badly, and they should all their anthem and come up with that.
But again, why was he allowed to get away with it? Why was he allowed to get away with it?
You know what a big bugbear of mine is, and it's not just international coaches, it's club coaches as well, especially at the bigger clubs, is that coaches don't understand that they are part of spreading the message of rugby league. It's not just, if you take a job at a big club, of course it's about winning matches, but it's also about the propagation, the publicity of rugby league. And too many of the big coaches just step back from that and go, not for us, we're not interested in talking to the press.
We could all name half a dozen of those.
And quite a few do. I mean, there are many who do. I mean, you can talk about several who are really good at that game. And might not enjoy doing it, but understand the importance of doing that. And there are 2 or 3 in Super League at the moment who just don't get it. Just don't get it. You think it's not just about your parochial little club, it's about the game as a whole.
Well, I'll tell you what I get. I don't want any Australians playing for England. Simple as that. So forget about it, Wayne Bennett. Forget about it.
Okay, quick one on State of Origin, because we've got on this channel, on Premier Sports, next week, the final State of Origin game. It's all done and dusted. We're back in Sydney. Do you think it's going to be a disappointing crowd?
Oh, no, I wouldn't have thought so.
Because they're talking about 40,000 and 80,000 stadium.
They will be disappointed by the way it's gone, not just this season, but the past seasons as well. But I think there'll be the people who turn out there and support it. It's a great concept. It really is a great concept.
The second match has rescued this series, hasn't it, in terms of entertainment?
The first one was dreadful.
In terms of entertainment, it has, Dave, but in terms of producing yet another dead rubber, no, it hasn't. And the fact that if it had been back at Suncorp, you could have said, well, there'll be 60,000 people coming out to celebrate the Maroons, rubbing the Blues' faces in it again. I do fear that the people of Sydney are pretty fickle at the best of times, and I can see them turning their noses up at this because the Blues have yet again just been so disappointed.
Yeah,
I think they'll support it and back it. I do.
Still worth tuning in for, though.
Oh yeah, sure. Because it's a great event, isn't it? And at times the best players in the world. So yeah,
they don't listen. That is not to ignore the fact that Aussie pride will be at stake. They've been kicked and battered about once again in New South Wales. They are on home turf at least. They will have a point to prove. He's brought in 3 new faces as a coach, Flora Daly. So, they're going to be trying to salvage a little bit of pride. It'll make for some great viewing for us. Yeah. Whether the Sydney people turn out to watch it in person or not is quite another thing. Last game for Paul Gallen, of course, he's already said that, and possibly last game for Robbie Farrett as well. So let's remind you what's coming up on this channel then, on Premier Sports over the next week or so, building up to that final State of Origin game.
The first match you can see is live from the Pertex Stadium, Friday morning. The Eels against the Roosters. That starts at 10:50. On Saturday, there's just the one game. Bulldogs against the Tigers at the ANZ Stadium. That's a 10:30 start. On Sunday, one game as well. The Panthers against the Sharks at Pepper Stadium. 7 a.m. You've got to get up early for that, but Gary's always up early on a Sunday morning, goes out for his 5-mile run, gets back in time for the Rugby League at 7 a.m. And then on Monday, the last of the games, just 4 games this weekend, the Raiders against the Cowboys at the Geo Stadium at 10 o'clock live. That is on Monday morning. And it all builds up to Wednesday. So park yourself on your sofa. I think it might actually be Ray Warren's last State of Origin call as well. So if for nothing else, it's worth tuning in for that. New South Wales against Queensland at the ANZ Stadium, 11 o'clock live. And you can join the masses out there in Sydney from your living rooms in wherever you happen to be watching that game. Don't forget, by the way, to keep up with all the Rugby League action on the website. It's www.premiersports.tv. Don't forget the S, premiersports.tv. That's as far as we go for this week of Back Chat. Next time we've got a chairman's special, but for the time being, thanks to Danny Lockwood from League Weekly, from Garry Schofield, who's a record Great Britain caps holder. Who'd have known that? And also from Graham Lovett, freelance broadcaster from the other side of the hills. Until next time, goodbye.